An iceberg divides a topic into various subtopics sorted by obscurity. Of course, you likely know this, so let us start from the tip. Numerous Latin, Middle French, and Greek loanwords. This refers to the new words the language attained since its progression from Old English to Middle English. They had associations with the higher class, and they remain today without those associations, just an air of erudition. No second person plural pronoun. The language does not distinguish between the second person singular in address to one listener and the second person plural in address to multiple listeners. They both receive a single word, you, even though the language distinguishes those numbers in the first person, as in, it has I and we. Inconsistent orthography. A rather famous trait of the language involves its orthography. For the most part, it aims to show the etymologies of words. For example, the word night has a silent K and GH, showing its earlier pronunciation of knicht. This often results in inconsistencies, like dream, seem, and theme show three ways to spell E before M. Verbed nouns. Every noun can become a verb in English. At least, they want you to believe this. To verb a noun, just conjugate it as if the base form had to before it. Like from the noun speedrun, I can say speedrunned, speedrunning. He speedruns Super Mario 64 every day. Also, as the verb comes from the noun, I would say speedrunned, not speedran. Sus. This word derives from and means suspicious, popularized by the 2018 game Among Us. Contractions. Symbolized by the apostrophe taking the spot of the omitted letter, the English language has many contractions, like can't, won't, let's, and even double contractions like I'd've for I would have. English does not possess a formality distinction, but people often treat contractions as informal and the full forms as more formal. Memes often highlight impossible contractions. Lee. Lee makes an adverb from an adjective, like wary becomes warily. In rare occasions, it makes an adjective from a noun, like home becomes homely. E as the most common letter. The record for the most common letter in English goes to E, often for its use in the formation of long vowels, staying silent in the process. To much curiosity, you can find a subreddit devoted to keeping English free of the letter E, and it proves quite a hard task, and especially as most pronouns take the letter, and the definite article the too. Non-rhotic accents. In received pronunciation, the United Kingdom norm for English pronunciation, r gets dropped or becomes consonantal schwa following a vowel, and forms a diphthong or triphthong. For example, fire becomes fire. Apostrophe s. Apostrophe s indicates possession in the language. In Middle English, it formed a whole syllable, why it takes an apostrophe today. We will move on to the shallows. Thou, ye, est, eth. In early modern English, so the time of Shakespeare, the archaic pronouns thou and ye remained in use, thou as the singular counterpart to you, then the oblique case of ye. Verbs, to agree with thou, took the est ending, and eth saw use if it followed a verb linked to a subject in the third person singular, like he. Pronouncing in WH words. A few dialects of English indeed pronounce the in these words, like what becomes what. In most dialects, no aspiration occurs before the w, so the expected makes no sound at all. Glottalized and tapped or flapped t. Glottalized t, as in button, appears the most in British English, and tapped or flapped t, as in better, in American English. Much discourse arises owing to these differences, and many memes too, like the meme about the pronunciation of bottle of water in British English. Vocal fry, upspeak. Vocal fry occurs if you try to speak out of your vocal range, and upspeak involves raising the intonation of sentences at the end as if to ask a question. You can hear both vocal fry and upspeak in the speech of young women in the general American accent, the accent opposed to the received pronunciation accent. Diacritics. This refers to marks above the letters. For example, the word naivete has two of them, a diaeresis on the I and an acute accent on the last E. English does away with diacritics, as in most of its words do not contain diacritics, but the diaeresis sees use in the New Yorker magazine to separate vowels, as in preemptive. Ending a sentence with a preposition. This referred to a rule taken from Latin grammar, as a preposition could not end a sentence in Latin, the language of value at the time. In modern times, this rule does not apply anymore. Split infinitives. Like the previous entry, in Latin, infinitives appeared as single words, so you would not have the ability to split them. In English, infinitives appear as two words. Take to go, for example, the infinitive of go. A few people follow this rule and say you cannot split infinitives, but in theory you can split them. You can say to quickly go, for example. Had sentence. Two students, James and John, per the teacher, need to describe a man who had a cold in the past. John writes, "The man had a cold." James writes, "The man had had a cold." James, while John had had a better effect on the teacher. Of course, with context, punctuation, and dips and peaks of intonation, you can guess with much more ease the meaning of the sentence. This sentence, without punctuation, often receives the treatment of a grammatical puzzle. Wise. Wise, as a suffix, can latch onto nouns to make adverbs, with the noun as the topic. For example, if I had games as the topic of this discourse, I could start a sentence with game-wise. This carries the same effect as in-game. Adjective order. In English, in practice, all adjectives follow this order: opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, purpose. For example, I can have a fantastic, large old circular gray builder's stone wishing well. Let us go deeper to the depths. The Great Vowel Shift. This refers to a series of sound changes marking the shift from Middle English to Early Modern English. Long story short, in long vowels, monophthongs, pure vowels, became pronounced higher, and the highest monophthongs, e and u, became diphthongs, pronounced with movement of the tongue, I and ow. Aspirated voiceless plosives. In English, except in consonant clusters beginning in s, the plosives ptk receive aspiration, so their pronunciation becomes ptk. Buffalo sentence. Buffalo, 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 buffalo. Like the had sentence, this can also serve as a grammatical puzzle, and it uses two meanings of the word buffalo, along with the name of the city of Buffalo, New York. It also contains a reduced relative clause, buffalo, buffalo, buffalo. Again, with proper intonation, the meaning becomes clear by context. Buffalo bison, other buffalo bison bully, also bully buffalo bison. Celtic influence. English has had little Celtic influence, even though Britain spoke a Celtic language, but it may have had a more massive influence than expected, in particular from Old English to Middle English. Non-etymological letters. This refers to non-etymological letters inserted in the period of the press, on about the time spelling became fixed. The S in island, for example, copies isle and it tries to derive it from Latin insula, but it has Germanic origin. Cockney rhyming slang. This form of slang, derived from the use of a rhyme and later the removal of the latter part, comes from England, in the East End of London. For example, china plate rhymes with mate, and so the latter word can get removed for just china to mean mate. The common term to blow a raspberry derives from Cockney rhyming slang, from raspberry tart, used to mean fart. Commas and periods go inside quotation marks. In American English, commas and periods go inside quotation marks, so this punctuation rule applies. In British English, this rule does not apply. Anglish. Anglish, in its most used sense, means English stripped off its foreign influence. So, the most pure form of English. This often involves the use of rare and dialectal words, used to achieve this purpose. We can still go deeper to the fathoms. Older forms of English had phonemic ch, heard in German and known as the ach-laut in that language. Ch fell in most situations except in the word loch, the pronunciation with ch deemed acceptable in that word, though it competes with the regular loch. Shavian alphabet. The Shavian alphabet writes every English word in phonemic form, without the use of the International Phonetic Alphabet. Its intended use as a device to write English in did not outperform the conventional Latin letters, though, so it did not reform English spelling. Children has two plurals. Children comprises child, the suffix and the suffix n, both plural suffixes. Of course, the productive plural suffix we use now takes a noun and ends it with z. Postpositive adjectives. A postpositive adjective, rather than coming before a noun, succeeds a noun. In English, it occurs in noun phrases like time immemorial, as opposed to immemorial time, and attorney general, as opposed to general attorney. The reason it occurs in these set phrases in English likely depends on its prominence in Middle French. Canadian raising. Canadian raising entails the raising of the diphthongs I, ow to I, o before voiceless consonants. So, for example, bite can get pronounced bite, and about, about. Conserves Proto-Germanic dental fricatives. This concerns the pair th, as in thought and this. Out of every extant Germanic language, just English and Icelandic conserve these fricatives from Proto-Germanic. Dord. This concerns no more, no less than an interpretation error in a dictionary. Imagine two people working on a dictionary from before the advent of the internet. The first suggests D or D, as in capital D or lowercase d, as a possible entry, meaning density. The second interprets D or D as spelling out a single word dord and puts dord in the dictionary, meaning density. Then, by the inclusion of the error, it could not get reverted, and it had to appear, fated to confuse its readers. Let us go the deepest we can to the abyss. E. This prefix formed many Old English verbs with a sense of completion in the past and had productivity, but it does not appear often in English anymore, save in rare words like yclept. If it still appears, it appears with altered spelling and pronunciation, such as in handiwork and aware. You can notice traces of this prefix in those words. Quizzaciously. This word got popularized by Channel Vsauce in its video The Zip Mystery as a rare word, giving just one result on Google in a book titled Elderspeak. It has earned more popularity since then. Modern English descends from Mandarin Chinese fringe theory. Few people, and I mean very few people, of course for a fringe theory, believe English comes from Mandarin Chinese just based on their sounds, not their roots. These people have very limited views of the world, it seems, for we know this does not have any truth to it. A single book provides all collective nouns for animals. A flock of birds, a gaggle of geese, an unkindness of ravens. You might know these terms and many more. Most of these have a written source. They come from the Book of St. Albans, also known as the Book of Hawking, Hunting, and Blazing of Arms. And if you wonder why, I can give just one answer, for fun. Thank you for watching.